I didn't catch him by stalking. I caught him because she wanted me to. She sent me a letter, every word soaked in their secret. I read it in front of everyone. His lies cracked. His world burned, and mine was reborn in that silence that followed. Before I take you inside this storm, like, share, and subscribe, because this isn't just a story. It's justice. I still remember the way that morning light slid through the blinds, warm and soft, like nothing in the world could go wrong. The kettle was hissing on the counter, and the smell of coffee filled the room, that quiet, familiar kind of peace that I used to believe was real. I didn't know it then, but I was standing on the edge of something that would strip everything I trusted down to its bones. People always talk about betrayal like it's a storm that suddenly hits. But mine came like a breeze, gentle at first, then cold enough to cut. She walked into the kitchen the way she always did, her hair tied back, a smile that looked almost the same as every other day. Almost. That's the word that stuck with me for weeks. Almost. Because her eyes didn't linger the way they used to. Her smile didn't touch the corners anymore. She poured herself coffee like it was routine, like we were fine, like nothing underneath the surface was burning. And God help me, I believed it. I believed the warmth in the room meant we were safe. I asked about our late night. She laughed softly, brushing it off as just work. I nodded because that's what trust does. It gives silence the benefit of the doubt. It takes cracks and pretends they're not there. But somewhere between her laughter and the way she looked past me, instead of at me, something inside me shifted. It was faint, almost a whisper, but it was real. I just didn't know how loud it would get later. I stirred my coffee slowly, watching the swirl fade to stillness. I used to love these mornings. The simplicity, the safety. I didn't realize then that those quiet moments were lies with warm hands. And maybe that's what betrayal does best. It hides in ordinary things. In breakfast tables, in lazy smiles, in someone saying I love you out of habit. If I had known what was coming, I would have memorized that moment a little longer. The calm before everything snapped. The last time my heart still trusted her. Because after that morning, nothing, not her smile, not the warmth, not even the way the sun hit the counter would ever feel the same again. It didn't happen overnight. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't always arrive kicking down the door. Sometimes it tiptoes in, sits quietly in the corner, and waits for you to notice. And at first, I didn't. I convinced myself the distance between us was just exhaustion. Maybe stress, maybe life getting heavier. But then the little things began to speak louder than her words ever did. She started carrying her phone everywhere. It used to live on the kitchen counter when she was home, but now it was glued to her hand like a second pulse. And when it buzzed, she'd turn the screen away from me, smile that thin, careful smile, and say it was just work. Work had suddenly become very funny, very late, and very private. And the way her eyes darted away when I asked even the smallest question told me more than any answer could. Nights got quieter too, not in a peaceful way, but in the kind that hums with things left unsaid. She stopped asking about my day. She stopped telling me about hers. Instead, she'd stare at her phone in the dark, that cold blue glow painting secrets across her face. I would lie there next to her, listening to her breathe, and wonder when exactly my presence had stopped mattering. I started to notice changes in her too. New perfume that lingered long after she left, lipstick shades I'd never seen before, and an energy about her that didn't belong to us anymore. I asked her about it once, lightly, like someone testing water they already know is freezing. She smiled, said she just wanted to change, and I nodded. I always nodded, because love, when it's blind, chooses comfort over truth, until the lie starts to choke. But the thing about intuition is, it doesn't shut up forever. It starts with a whisper, then it grows teeth. It scratches at your chest, your peace, your trust, until it's all you can hear. And as the nights grew longer and her laughter grew colder, I felt something settling in me, a quiet, patient storm. I didn't have proof yet, but I didn't need it. The truth was already sitting between us at the table every morning, pretending to be silence. The day the letter arrived, it didn't feel like a bomb landing on my doorstep. It felt quiet, too quiet, like the world had already decided to stop breathing for a moment. I remember the way the envelope looked plain white, harmless. No return name, no mark. Just my name written on it, in the kind of handwriting that doesn't belong to strangers. My chest tightened before I even touched it. Some part of me, the part that had been whispering for weeks, already knew what it was holding. I sat there for a long time, staring at it like it might disappear if I blinked long enough. My fingers hovered over the seal, my breath sitting heavy in my throat. The kitchen felt colder, quieter, as if it too was waiting for the truth. My heart wasn't pounding, no. It was slower, heavier, like it was bracing itself for a punch it couldn't dodge. When I finally tore it open, I didn't just find ink on paper. I found everything she'd hidden behind her soft smiles. It was a letter from him, the man she'd given the parts of herself I thought were mine. He wrote like someone who believed their love story was poetic, like betrayal dressed up in sweet words could be beautiful. He talked about the nights they shared, the way she laughed when she was with him, the plans they whispered about when I was asleep just a few rooms away. He described moments that didn't belong to me anymore. Maybe never did. Every word hit me like a cold wave. I read it once, then twice, and by the third time, my hands weren't shaking anymore. They were still. Because there's a point where pain stops screaming and just hardens. It was no longer suspicion clawing at my chest. It was truth, undeniable and ugly. What broke me wasn't the confession. It was how casually it was written, as if I was the intruder, as if I was the one standing in the way of their little fairy tale. I sat there, the letter limp in my hands, and something inside me shifted. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to cry. No, I was going to let karma walk through the front door. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on the couch, the letter on the table beside me like a quiet, poisonous secret. The world felt different now. The walls, the floor, even the air in the house, everything that once felt safe had turned sharp. I thought the pain would eat me alive, but it didn't. Something colder took its place. Something patient. Betrayal has a way of forcing you to choose who you want to be next. You can break, or you can burn carefully. And I wasn't going to hand her the satisfaction of watching me shatter. No. If she wanted to build a story behind my back, I'd make sure it ended with the kind of silence that echoes. I spent the next day quietly. She didn't notice the way my eyes followed her differently now, not with love, but with a kind of clarity that only comes after the truth rips through you. She laughed at breakfast. She kissed my cheek. And I almost laughed too. It was like living beside a stranger wearing her skin. I decided the confrontation wouldn't happen in the shadows. Secrets are born in darkness. I wanted this one to die in the light. So I made a plan. I called a few people, the kind of people whose opinions she cared about more than anything. Friends, family, the ones she performed perfection for. I told them I wanted to host a small dinner. She was thrilled. She thought I was trying to fix us. I watched her excitement as she helped plan the evening. It was almost poetic. The same hands that built the lie were unknowingly preparing its funeral. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just listened, quietly, as she spoke about decorations, music, and the people who would be there. My silence must have felt like forgiveness to her. To me, it was focus. And the whole time, the letter stayed tucked inside my jacket pocket, folded, neat, waiting. I didn't need to scream to make it hurt. All I needed was the right moment. She thought she controlled the story. But stories like this, they don't end with liars winning. They end when truth is handed a microphone. And I was ready to hand it over. The night of the dinner, everything looked perfect, and I hated how perfect it looked. Candles flickered softly, plates gleamed under the warm lights, and laughter floated through the air like nothing in this world could break. She was radiant, moving through the room like someone who had never been caught lying. She hugged people, smiled effortlessly, and reached for my hand as if it still belonged to her, and I held it. I held it with a calmness that wasn't love anymore. It was the stillness before a storm. As the night went on, conversations wrapped around the table, easy and light. Everyone adored her. Why wouldn't they? She was good at pretending, maybe better than I'd ever realized. I sat there, listening to stories, watching her lips curve around each lie disguised as charm. And beneath the table, the letter sat folded in my pocket. It burned against my leg like a quiet reminder of what was real. At some point, I stopped hearing what anyone was saying. My heart wasn't racing. It was steady, sharp, the kind of calm that only comes when there's no turning back. I stood slowly, letting my chair slide back, and in an instant the laughter dimmed. Every face turned toward me. She looked up, a small, confused smile on her face, like she couldn't imagine a world where I was about to ruin hers. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the letter, and let the sound of the paper unfolding fill the silence. It was almost poetic, the way joy drained from her face before I even said a word. I started reading, slowly, clearly, every sentence from him, every sweet, pathetic confession. I let the words land like stones on the table, one after another, till the air grew thick with the sound of betrayal finally speaking for itself. Gasps filled the room. Someone whispered her name. A fork clattered onto a plate. She stammered something, a denial, maybe, but her voice cracked, and for the first time in weeks, she didn't look untouchable. She looked small, exposed, exactly how she'd made me feel. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just kept reading. Because this wasn't about me losing control. This was about handing the truth the spotlight. And in that moment, it was louder than anything she could ever say. The moment the last word left my mouth, the room didn't feel like a dinner anymore. It felt like a fracture. You could hear the sound of everything breaking without a single plate shattering. Her smile was gone, replaced by something wild and terrified. It was the look of someone watching the walls they built crumble faster than they could grab the pieces. She reached for the letter, panic in her movements, whispering my name like it could save her. But I didn't move. She kept saying, "It's not what it looks like. The oldest, most fragile lie in the book." Her voice cracked halfway through, and in that silence, even her friends didn't rush to fill the space for her. They just stared, wide-eyed, shocked. Betrayal has a sound when it lands, like all the air being sucked out of a room at once. One of my closest friends, someone who had always defended her, slammed his hand against the table. The sound made her flinch. He wasn't yelling at me. He was yelling at her. "How could you?" He barked, and it wasn't a question. It was a verdict. She turned toward him like she could explain it away, like her charm could still save her. But it didn't. Not anymore. She tried to stand, her words tumbling desperate. "We can talk about this," she started, but I cut her off without raising my voice. "No, you talked with him. I'm just reading what you wrote into the shadows." She shook her head so hard, it looked like she was trying to erase herself. Her tears came fast, but they didn't feel like the kind that heal anything. They were the kind that come when lies stop working. The room was quiet except for her broken sobs. And here's the thing about that kind of moment. No matter how much they beg, the truth doesn't bend back. It stays right where you put it. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I let her feel the weight of every face looking at her, of every lie she'd fed, of every wall now dust beneath her feet. It was strange. Standing in the eye of the storm I didn't start, but I was no longer the one drowning in it. The thing about truth is, once it's out, you can't pull it back in. It sits there, heavy and undeniable, and suddenly the world starts shifting around it. She stood in front of everyone shaking, mascara bleeding down her face, still trying to pick up the shards of the life she'd built on lies. But no one was reaching out to help her anymore. Not one person. She had spent so long polishing her image, making sure every corner of her life looked flawless. And in a few minutes, a single letter had done what months of my quiet suspicions couldn't. It stripped her mask clean off. Friends who once adored her now stared at her like they'd never really known her at all. Family members whispered. Some couldn't even look at her. The weight of their silence was louder than any accusation. She tried to speak. Words stumbled out, excuses, fragments, things she must have thought would sound convincing. But lies, once exposed to light, lose their power. They turn flimsy, transparent. And the more she spoke, the smaller she seemed. I didn't need to say anything else. The letter had spoken for me. but karma has a way of making sure its echo reaches far beyond the room it started in. I had already forwarded the letter earlier that day to people who mattered in her world, her inner circle, the one she'd carefully guarded. Her boss, her friends, the people she thought would never see her without the mask. Her phone started vibrating over and over. She picked it up with shaking hands. I watched as her face paled, as messages poured in. Not support, not comfort, just fallout. One truth had undone everything she'd spent years pretending to be. I felt nothing explosive. No rush of revenge. Just a quiet stillness settling in my chest. She had built the lie. All I did was let the world hear it. And that's the thing about karma. It doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just stands quietly behind you and lets the truth do the work. She looked at me then, eyes red, her world crumbling around her. For the first time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel broken. I felt free. After everyone left, the house felt unfamiliar, like a place I'd outgrown without realizing it. The laughter from earlier had vanished, leaving only the echo of what used to be my life. She sat on the floor near the table, surrounded by everything she'd built, everything she thought would protect her. But the truth has a way of peeling back every layer until only the raw, shaking core remains. She called my name once, soft and broken, like the sound of something that knew it was already too late. I didn't answer. Not because I hated her. Hate would have required more energy than I had left. No, I was done. I'd carried the weight of suspicion, the ache of being lied to, the sting of watching love rot from the inside. And somewhere between reading that letter and watching her world collapse, I'd set it down. I walked past her slowly, the way you do when you've already said everything without saying a word. She reached out, fingers brushing the air, but they never touched me. The space between us felt wider than it ever had before. She had burned the bridge, and I was finally standing on the other side. Outside, the night air felt different, lighter, the kind of quiet that doesn't suffocate, it frees. I leaned against the railing, letting the cold bite at my skin. For weeks, I'd imagined what this moment would feel like. Rage, grief, something violent. But it wasn't any of that. It was calm. A deep, bone-level calm. Because when truth walks into the room, lies don't get to stay. I looked up at the dark sky, the city lights blinking in the distance, and realized I wasn't broken. I'd just been carrying something that was never mine to keep. She chose betrayal. I chose to let the truth speak. And now it was quiet. People think revenge is loud, but real karma, the kind that doesn't need screaming or fire, it's silent. It just lands, and when it does, the person who caused the pain ends up exactly where they belong. Before I turned off the porch light, I took one last breath and whispered to myself, "This isn't the end of me. It's the beginning."